Good morning once again, my brothers and sisters. Here we are for another Living Hope Today study. I want to welcome you to 2 Samuel 18 this morning. Here we see a victory, but the cost of the victory is incredibly painful for King David. As Nathan has predicted through the Spirit of God, your household's going to be a disaster as a consequence of your sin. We see that played out today. Let me show you. 2 Samuel 18, here we go. David mustered the men who were with him and appointed over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. You remember David's in a situation where Absalom has rebelled against him. He has declared himself to be the king. David has fled Jerusalem. He's up in the northern part of Gilead now, a Menahayim area. Well, now it's going to come to blows. Preparation for war is completed. Now we're going to decide who's really going to be the king. David is vastly outnumbered based on the fact that almost all of Israel went with Absalom. All right, so with the guys he has, what does he do? He appoints leadership, right? Commanders of thousands, commanders of hundreds. David sends the troops out. He has a strategy. He's a great warrior. We all know that. He had a third under the command of Joab, a third under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and a third under Ittai, the Gittite. The king told the troops, I myself will surely march out with you. David's intention, I know how to do this, let's go do it. But the men said, you must not go out. If we are forced to flee, they won't care about us. Even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worthy of 10,000 of us. It would be better now for you to give us support from the city. Oh, wow. So David's being uninvited to the battle. All right. The king answered, I will do whatever seems best to you. So the king stood beside the gate. Wow. The king stood beside the gate while all the men marched out in units of hundreds and of thousands. So the king is watching the army that he has go out to prepare to fight Absalom and his forces, his own son. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, those are the leaders, be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. And all the troops heard the king giving orders concerning Absalom to each of the commanders. What do we learn here? David doesn't want to be responsible for his son's death. He doesn't want his son to die. Okay. That's understandable, isn't it? The army marched into the field to fight Israel, and the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. Now that's going to play a part in this. Let me show you. There, the army of Israel was defeated by David's men, and the casualties that day were great. 20,000 men died in the forest. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest claimed more lives that day than the sword. Now think about this with me. Moses is leading the Exodus. The Red Sea blocks the departure. What happens? The Egyptian army approaches. The Red Sea opens up. The Israelites go through on dry ground, and then, an act of God, the Red Sea collapses, killing the Egyptians. We see God doing things. Remember in Joshua 10 when hailstones were killing the enemy, or in Numbers 16 when the earth opened up and swallowed the rebels. Here we see a claim that the forest is doing more damage than the warriors. Now, if you have a vast army and you're fighting in an open field, you have a great advantage. But if you're fighting against seasoned fighters who know how to fight in a guerrilla warfare setting and they take you into the forest, you have a disadvantage. You might, the terrain, of course, is probably very rugged, but the text here is hinting at something I think is very important, and that is God is winning the battle for David. by fighting in the forest, there is a great example of God using natural resources to the advantage of his own purpose. And his purpose is what? King David's going to reign forever. Absalom's not going to be the one to stop that. Well, let's move on. Now, Absalom happened to meet David's men. All right, so here we go, the confrontation. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, which you would find in a forest, right? Absalom's head got caught in the tree. Now, we've already been told he has a great amount of hair, beautiful hair. Well, there he is. He was left hanging in midair while the mule he was riding kept on going. So now he's hanging by his hair off a branch of a large oak tree. Sort of ironic, isn't it? It's like God has created a circumstance that's handing the rebel to David's army. Wow, when one of the men saw this, he told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. All right, now Joab has specific instructions from the king, right? Be careful, don't hurt my son. Joab said to the man who had told him this, what? You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have had to give you 10 shekels of silver and a warrior's belt. Why didn't you kill him? Well, this guy has been listening to David, right? The man replied, even if 1,000 shekels were weighed out into my hands, I would not lift my hand against the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, protect the young man Absalom for my sake. Notice how the text repeats this to us, having come from King David himself through the lips of this man who is afraid of King David and respectful enough to honor his wishes. You think Joab's that respectful to honor the king's wishes? This man goes on, and if I had put my life in jeopardy and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have kept your distance from me. Joab said, I am not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand, and he plunged them into Absalom's heart, while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. Joab kills Absalom against the wishes of the king. He does it deliberately, forcefully. He does it in a way that you would think David would seek retribution against him. But we'll see what's happening with that in a minute. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom. They struck him and they killed him. So they make sure he's dead. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. So the battle's over, right? We've killed the leader. They took Absalom, they threw him into a big pit in the forest. They piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites, those are the northern kingdom people that have been fighting for Absalom, all the Israelites fled to their homes. Okay, so it's a rout. 20,000 guys die, and Absalom is killed. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, where he thought, I have no son to carry on the memory of my name. So Absalom apparently is childless. He named the pillar after himself and is called Absalom's monument to this day. All right, why does the text tell us that? Just so we know that Absalom had that opinion of himself and didn't have descendants, at least male descendants. Now, Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, listen to this, let me run and take the news to the king that the Lord has delivered him from the hand of his enemies. Ahimaaz, he's a runner. He wants to run. Again, remember, there's no internet, there's no cell phones, there's no telephones at all, no electricity. If you want to communicate a message, you have to take it yourself to wherever you're going to communicate it. Well, what does Joab say to him? You are not the one to take the news today, Joab told him. You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today, because the king's son is dead. You know, David has this habit of reacting negatively to this kind of news. In fact, he's killed some of the messengers that have sent him bad news in the past regarding Saul's death. Well, he doesn't want to put Ahimaaz in that kind of situation. Then Joab said to a Cushite, which is normally somebody from Ethiopia, "Go tell the king what you have seen." The Cushite bowed down before Joab and ran off. So there is a messenger sent, but Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, again said to Joab, "Come, what may, please let me run behind the Cushite." But Joab replied, "My son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that'll bring you a reward." And he said, "Come what may, I want to run." So Joab said, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain, and he outran the Cushite. So we got two runners going to David, and Ahimaaz is the faster one. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates, the watchman went up to the roof of the gateway. By the wall, he looked out. He saw a man running alone. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said, "If he is alone, he must have good news." And the man came closer and closer. Samuel 18:26. Then the watchman saw another man running, and he called down to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man running alone." The king said, "He must be bringing good news too." The watchman said, "It seems to me that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." "He's a good man," the king said. "He comes with good news." Notice how drawn out this is in the text. It's not like, so one guy showed up and gave the news. They're giving us blow by blow where David's anticipation is, this is going to be great. We got two messengers coming, and Ahimaaz is a good guy. He's going to be giving me good news. David's fairly optimistic right here. Then Ahimaaz called out to the king, "All is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up the men who lifted their hands against my lord the king." So first message received, verse 28, "King, the battle's over. Your monarchy survives. It's time to go back to Jerusalem, where you belong." The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Now this is some sort of technical move on Ahimaaz's part. He says, "I saw great confusion just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was." So I don't think he's telling everything he knows right here, right? He might not have seen that happen, but it's likely he knows that happened. I think we can be sure that he does know, but he's not the one to tell the king. The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there, and the Cushite arrived and said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has delivered you today from all who rose up against you." The text has now told us that the rebellion has been quelled. It's told us 2 times. All right, the king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The same question. The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man." Implication? He's dead. He was eliminated in the battle. The king was shaken. That prophecy that Nathan gave him, hey, you know what? Your household is going to have nothing but violence, nothing but chaos from here on out. Well, here we go. He's lost Absalom. The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and he wept. Nothing worse than watching a victorious king crying in grief. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." All this repetition does what for us? It helps us amplify the grief that David feels. He is in a terrible situation in his heart. He has lost Absalom as a son. A lot of people would look at that as a king and say, well, we've killed the enemy. We're all happy because we have survived the rebellion. We're reestablished in power, and those who want to hurt us are gone. But David's reaction, no. This victory comes with tremendous pain. And we'll see how he plays through that pain in the next few chapters, where he basically loses his focus over his grief. Again, the consequence of sin is very painful. Help us, God, to be faithful today. God bless you, church. Serve him well today.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.